Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, whenever you find a way to watch this podcast. It is me, Omar Jambora, the Burger Popper, and we are back this week for the Lambert Trophy Bull Rush. And what a week it was. And we're talking a little bit beforehand about our approach, about how we're not going to focus on teams that we don't think are making a bowl. But man, it feels like a lot of teams played themselves, or a few teams played themselves out of a bowl this weekend. It was very, very interesting, honestly. But yeah, John, how is everything going?
Everything's good, man. I see you're rocking the Rutgers Scarlet Knights shirt, so I like that.
Yeah, just for the occasion, shout out to Maddie Waters at Are You Insane 1869, a good friend of mine. We met up at the Notre Dame Navy game, and he gave me this gift along with the commemorative first game pin for Rutgers. So very grateful for those gifts, and I figured I told him I'd rock it on the Lambert Trophy Bowl Rush because it's the occasion for it. Even though Rutgers may not make a bowl after last night after Friday night's game, but still had to rock the shirt.
Yeah, yeah, right on. And we'll see. I mean, they've got a chance, puncher's chance. You know, I'm not optimistic for them, but they're not out of it. USC is a much better team than I think their record indicates. The metrics love them. I think they're like a top 20 team advanced metrics wise.
I think so too. I mean, for me as well, like I agree with that statement about them being better. I just look back on the win against LSU, it just continues to baffle me, but I just see a USC team that's young and doesn't play well late into games. Um, and yeah, there really isn't much else to say beyond that. I mean, I know you as a Penn State fan, they gave you guys a scare out there, out there in LA. So you know very well how good that USC team is.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I guess we can start from the top with Penn State with just an interesting win against Wisconsin. For a while, it looked in doubt, but of course, the backup quarterback came in to save the day. I mean, on NBC on Big Ten Saturday night, that's what folk legends are made out of.
Yeah, for sure, man. I posted that I think um, in yeah on Twitter in my group chat. Like I was so proud of Bo Prebula, man. Dude battled, came in. He's first of all comes in. Unheralded or semi-unheralded recruit, knows that there's going to be a five-star on the roster. Sits for 3 years. Runs a couple of Wildcat packages, and then all of a sudden he's thrust into at halftime down 10-7. Hostile environment. Wisconsin given up 16 points in the last three games combined. Solid defense. He comes in and with a little bit of help from the Penn State defense, delivers just a dominating win in the second half. Seemed completely unflappable. He obviously isn't Drew Aller, but he does a couple of things that Drew Aller does not do. So yeah, just so proud of my dude, man. Love that win for him. Now, it is concerning that not only did we lose Drew Aller, we lost Danny Dennis Sutton, one of our stud DNs. And I'm not sure I looked at the injury report yesterday and there was no more clarity. I'm not sure who's going to be playing for the big Ohio State game coming up here. So that is a little bit concerning going forward.
Yeah, it is for sure. I mean, Ohio State, of course, is the biggest roadblock. I do see Penn State going 4-1 with the rest of the schedule. I want to pose an interesting question for Penn State's bowl hope or playoff hopes. Do you think it's in their best interest to actually, yeah, I guess to lose the Big Ten title game and then kind of let the rankings play out and or not lose the Big Ten title game, lose to Ohio State, let the winner of Indiana and Ohio State go to the Big Ten title game, let the rankings play out for seeding purposes with an 11-1 record?
I personally don't think so. I mean, we'll see. We'll see how things end up. This whole 12-team playoff is so new. But from my college basketball analysis days, I was always looking at who is it better to lose early in the conference tournament if you're a top ranked team and have some rest before going to the big dance. And I know this isn't apples to apples, but I ran the analysis on that, and basically the answer was no. It was always better to be playing hot, to be to make it as far as you can in the conference tournament and go hot into the NCAA tournament. So, barring suffering some injury or something like that in the Big Ten championship game, I would say it's always better to be playing hot to make that championship game. Either obviously better to win it and get the bye, but win or lose, I think it's better to not only have that momentum with you, but I think psychologically for your players, it goes a long way as well.
Yeah, that's a great point for sure. Just wanted to ask that question with this really crazy Big Ten race that we are having. It really is shaping out to be something interesting where we could have, I guess, 4 11-1 teams when it's all said and done. Oregon,
Yeah,
Indiana, yeah, four, yeah,
yeah. Well, and then the other thing is you could have three undefeated teams. You could have Oregon, Indiana, and Penn State all undefeated. None
that's
of
right.
them
Wow.
none of them play each other. It's just these conferences are getting too big, Omar. It's stupid. What are we doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I
How can
agree.
you go undefeated in a power four conference and theoretically miss your conference championship game?
Exactly. I mean, your reward is no bye and a game against, the group of five title or the group of five representative. So definitely an interesting aspect this year of the college football landscape and something we'll probably see a lot more, honestly. And something has to be done, really. I guess they'll ignore it this first time and then they'll take care of it other times. But we'll see for sure. Staying in the Keystone State with Penn State's arch rival or former arch rival, for those of you that are younger Penn State fans, Pitt looked impressive against Syracuse, more so the Pitt defense. Kyle McCord kind of, I think he was colorblind or something, throwing 5 picks to the Pitt defense, including, I think, like 2 pick sixes. Pitt looked impressive against Syracuse. The defense did. Now they face their toughest test. Pitt SMU, a 1983 Cotton Bowl rematch, which is now a conference game if we're talking about the ludicrous state of college football right now, but I digress. So Pitt is a 7.5 point underdog opening line against SMU. This is a bit of a playoff elimination game with Pitt's schedule with Clemson coming up. Do you see the Panthers making a playoff push? I guess was your mind changed on the Pitt Panthers after Thursday night?
So, first of all credit to Pitt. They really blew the doors off Cuse. It was never close. Yeah, it was first quarter. I think was two of those pick sixes. Pitt, they really keyed in. Narduzzi was just blitzing the hell out of Cuse, and that's what happens. I guess that he keyed in. McCord is a great quarterback. He's done great for Cuse this year, but I think they keyed in a little bit on the recipe to beating them, which is making sure that McCord has not a lot of time. So I think the linebackers for Pitt showed out, and they a lot of them those guys are studs. I was impressed by Pitt, but I also thought that it was a little bit of Cuse losing the game so big and not Pitt winning so much. Obviously with two pick sixes in the first quarter and another pick as well. That has to be a little bit more than just skill on Pitt's hand. So at the same time, I do also feel like they're being disrespected with this line at SMU. I feel like they're being disrespected with their position in the relative polls. They're what I think 18 in the AP poll yesterday. So undefeated Power Four team. I know their schedule hasn't been the toughest, but I feel like they're being disrespected. And hey, if I was Pitt, if I was Narduzzi, I'd say I love that disrespect. Keep it coming. Put us down at 19. Put us down at 25. I don't care. Keep winning, and it all takes care of itself. So I think it's going to be a very interesting game. SMU has been slinging it. They've been playing some fun ball. I'm going to be really looking forward to watching it, but I think it's going to be closer than that line. I think Pitt's going to be right in it with a chance to win it.
Yeah, I agree. SMU was pretty sloppy last or Saturday against Duke, so it could be something to watch against a very opportunistic Pitt defense. And I think it definitely is closer than a 7 point game, like you said. It is a bit of elimination game with the disrespect in the AP polls. I think because the disrespect in the AP polls translates to the playoff. I don't think the subjective nature of the playoff poll, subjective nature of the playoff poll really translates well for Pitt. So I think what they need, I guess Pitt's, best scenario, or I guess worst case scenario for making the playoff would be to go 12-0 in the regular season with a loss to Miami in the ACC title game. I can see them like crunching out an at-large bid at that point for the playoff if they go undefeated because I'll have a win again against Clemson under their belt at that point. But I think yeah,
Oh,
the
you froze
disrespect
me?
is real.
You froze there for a second,
Oh, at what point did I freeze?
just maybe 10 seconds ago.
Okay, 10 seconds. So I was saying, I think the worst case scenario for Pitt making the playoff, of course, Pitt makes the playoff winning ACC, but if Pitt goes undefeated in the regular season, if they beat Clemson but lose to Miami in the ACC title game, which at that point, with other games happening, Miami might be number 3 or 4 in the country at that point. I think at that point, Pitt cracks the top 12 and ends up making the playoff. I think that's the best case scenario for the Panthers, or sorry, worst case scenario for the Panthers in making the playoff if they don't win the ACC. In terms of bowl games, I think that the Pop Tarts Bowl was first choice over ACC teams after the playoff. I think they'd be hard pressed to pass on the Pitt Panthers, even though Pitt has a known reputation for poor fan support at home and on the road. But I just think that's the best team available, and with the rest of the ACC, with especially if Clemson makes the playoff again, I just think that Pitt is destined for the Pop Tarts Bowl in Orlando.
Could be, and I'll take this opportunity to apologize a little bit to the Pitt Panthers. I myself was doubting them just last week, and I think that dominating victory over Cuse has opened my eyes a little bit. I think I think they need the proper respect, and as we were talking about Omar, there is a scenario in which we see Pitt, Penn State, and Army. Now that Navy has fallen to Notre Dame in the college football play. I mean, Navy could still make it; it's possible, but let's pull for Army here. So we could see those three in the college football playoff, and we could see a game between two of them.
Yeah, that is the best case scenario for me, for us as Northeast college football fans, especially Penn State Pitt game. And for me as an Army fan, I don't think Army's played Pitt since the early 80s at the latest. I mean, that's a dream game, honest. I remember just those Northeast rivalries in general, keeping those alive for Army. Those are just so huge. Like last year we played Syracuse for the first time since 96, second time since 89, I think. And then I think you remember almost a decade ago, Army coming into Beaver Stadium and notching a late game drive, but of course in those days it fell short. It was fun to be an Army fan in those days. So maybe we'll get revenge for that 2015 game. So yeah, definitely a great scenario. I'm excited for it. Hope happens. I hope one of those matchups happens for the playoffs. But you mentioned Navy, and I think that's a good segue to talking about the midshipmen. And man, at the post game press conference, Coach Brian Newberry said he thought some of his players he thought some of the players thought the moment was too big, or not. They didn't think that, but they played as if the moment was too big. I don't want to misquote anyone, but man, I mean, it seemed like that Navy had not turned the ball over since their first game against Bucknell, and they ended up fumbling 7 times, losing 5 of them and throwing an interception. And you just can't win, especially against a top 12 team like Notre Dame. And they ended up falling 51-14. I will say they moved the ball very well in that game. If you look at the box score, Blake Horvath had over 100 yards, over I think 7 yards a carry, passed the ball well, but Navy was their own worst enemy, and they're still having a great season, but I think their playoff hopes are very slim. I think they need some chaos to happen in the Mountain West with Boise State and UNLV. But man, what a blow to their playoff hopes that was. That loss to Notre Dame was.
Yeah, I would say it had to be mental there. Like some of those fumbles were completely unforced, just guys, probably looking upfield a little bit too early, just, thinking they gotta, start getting their jukes in and things like that. So, yeah, bummer. It could have been a much closer matchup. Could have been, something that went down to the wire. I think without, what is it, 6 or 7 turnovers, the whole game would have been much different. But yeah, obviously, without some major chaos in the Mountain West, and in a win over Army and AAC championship, Navy will not be in the playoff. So most of their goals on the. I mean, I don't think probably even before the season they thought playoff was really in the cards. So it's pretty much all of their goals from before the season still on the table. Win the AAC, beat Army. That would be still a really successful season for them. So they still control that. And bowl games. What are we talking? Military bowl, something of that nature.
Yes, I think the Military Bowl is really Navy's trip. They have clinched a spot at home, I think, for the Military Bowl should they not make the playoff. And because the Military Bowl has not had Navy since 2017, a Power Five team has not visited Navy at home since 2017 when they played Virginia in that Military Bowl. I think their opponent, just based on ACC results from Saturday, I think their opponent has to be North Carolina at this point. I mean, the Tar Heels just have struggled this year, but they looked good against Virginia, another team that that's fighting for one of those middling bowl positions in the ACC. They haven't played North Carolina since '92. North Carolina is kind of a name brand, so really a good way to end the season for Navy. I see them playing in that one, and I honestly think they can beat North Carolina. I mean, like if they don't have the mistakes they did against Notre Dame, I think they beat North Carolina. I wouldn't say with relative ease, but definitely they won't need a perfect performance against North Carolina, I think.
Yeah, they could be favored in that matchup, but I don't know what Vegas thinks, but they'd certainly have a very strong chance.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's honestly not a bad way to end the season. I mean, we'll talk about the Fenway Bowl a little bit later, but I think the Fenway Bowl goes in a different direction because the Military Bowl probably lobbies a lot for Navy, and I don't, why wouldn't they? So staying in the ACC, we focus more on Pitt for Syracuse with this performance against Pitt. I guess would you say they're destined for the Fenway Bowl? I mean, they played in the Pinstripe Bowl 2 years ago. Uh, I mean, they have a favorable schedule. I'm not really as familiar with the ACC's bowl kind of politicking. I know that, excuse me, the league office has a role and has a say, and they can kind of strong arm teams into choose or strong arm bowls into choosing different teams. But with the rest of Syracuse's schedule, I can see them going really. I mean, 8-4, 7-5, honestly. Um, It depends on how, honestly, I feel like the biggest swing game is the UConn game. Really, that might be a hot take. I think the UConn game is the biggest swing game on the schedule that could push them at 8-4 or 7-5. But I guess, do you see Syracuse destined for the Fenway Bowl with it being one of the ACC's lower tiered bowls?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds reasonable. Yeah, looking at the schedule, yeah, I mean, really, none of these aside from Miami are a projected loss. I would say they're at least, yeah. I mean, they're got to be favored over UConn and BC, probably Virginia Tech, and they go out to Cal. So yeah, they could win 3 or 4 of these games, and yeah, maybe Fenway Bowl looks plausible. Maybe they get in something a little bit more prestigious at if they're sitting there at 9 wins. But yeah, somewhere around that.
Yeah, I guess I'll adjust my statement. I mean, maybe they're not destined. I'd say maybe an 8-4 Syracuse team gets sent to the Sun Bowl, but I really feel like I feel like SMU is locked in for the Sun Bowl with them being in Texas and them only being 8 hours away. I feel like if there was ever such thing as a home team for the Sun Bowl, SMU would be it. So I mean, the Sun Bowl is probably the most prestigious of the middle tier bowls. I think the Holiday Bowl is a bit of a stretch for a team of Syracuse's caliber. So trying to think what else are the middle tier bowls that they have there. I mean, the Mayo Bowl, you typically want a Carolina school in that. So it's kind of a precarious situation with the ACC's bowls where it's like Syracuse has these recent performances, but there's always a more attractive team that could push them to the friendly confines of Fenway in Boston, which your fans might not be happy with in terms of vacationing, but I think it's just the luck of the draw with bowl selections.
Yeah, I was just looking at the odds here. ESPN does not agree with me. Only game that in the remaining five here is UConn. So
Wow. Okay.
we'll see. It might be a 6-6, 7-5 Syracuse team. I mean, if you
Okay.
if you trust ESPN's predictive metrics here.
Yeah, I think the big thing that we always talk everyone always talks about is September Maryland. I really feel like there's a such thing as mid-fall Syracuse that where like the turning point happens with Syracuse past few years with Dino Babers. Of course, right now they got Fran Brown at the helm, but Syracuse has not finished strong, and I think ESPN might be. I mean, I don't know if these predictive models take like previous results from previous years and into advantage. I guess take vibes into their algorithms, but
Yeah.
yeah, like it would be a rerun of past Syracuse years. So yeah, another I guess another bowl that I just saw also on the list is the Gator Bowl. The Gator Bowl seems reasonable, honestly. No Florida team that is eligible for the Gator Bowl, so definitely a storyline to watch for them. Staying in the ACC, let's see, staying in the ACC, the big story for Friday night was Boston College blowing that big lead against Louisville. And I know we wanted to focus more on the bowl teams, the teams that we feel are likely to go to a bowl. But I really feel like Boston College played themselves out of a bowl, especially with SMU and Pitt on the schedule. The game against Syracuse in a couple weeks is a must-win game for their bowl hopes, but I just don't see them pulling it out, honestly. But who knows? They showed some good things to look forward to for the rest of the year against Louisville, but they just couldn't close the game out for whatever reason.
Yeah, I don't see wins on this. I probably don't even see one, but I don't know. I mean, that's maybe a toss up. Oh, they do have them favored against North Carolina as well. So theoretics, but the margin for error is razor thin there because they've got two ranked matchups as well uh, in the other two games. So yeah, I'm not optimistic, but there is a glimmer of hope for BC fans.
Yeah, there really is. I mean, if ESPN says they're favored, there must be a good chance against North Carolina. North Carolina's been on and off this year. It's been really weird to predict North Carolina, but I think they needed that Louisville game just for the sake of, like you said, the margin for error and everything with the two ranked games against SMU, and then of course at against Pitt at the end of the year. So, like you said. I mean, I just don't really see it happening. Honestly, if they were to make it, I think they'd be a shoe-in for the Pinstripe Bowl because they haven't appeared in that one since 2017. Their opponent, just with everything happening in the Big Ten recently, geez, I forget the order, but I guess maybe Iowa. I'd say Iowa would be an opponent. Um, Yeah, probably against Iowa at that point. But man, yeah, just a tough break for Boston College. And I do think that the Bill O'Brien era will take off, will take Boston College to new heights. But I just think there's just going to be some growing pains this year.
Yeah, and I think one thing that these again predictive analytics are not taking into account is momentum or things like they have lost three straight. The last one they won was at home, a nail biter over Western Kentucky. So, they're certainly not trending upward.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, no momentum really. It's just tough for BC at this point. Going on to another former Big East member, West Virginia. They had a big win against Arizona, or I guess a much needed win against Arizona for their bowl hopes. I'm not sold on West Virginia, and we talked beforehand. I don't think you're sold on West Virginia's bowl hopes still, but the Big 12 is just so hard to predict.
Yeah, I mean they're another one similar to BC that it could they need two wins. They could get them. A lot of these games are a toss up. They obviously don't have on the remaining schedule as nearly as tough of a slate. They don't have any ranked teams, but yeah, I mean, if you're a betting man, it's hard to it's hard to put hard earned cash on a West Virginia team that that maybe they come out and play strong, but I just I can't be confident in it.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with the middle of the Big 12 playing so well recently. Baylor beating Texas Tech, and of course TCU beating Texas Tech this past weekend. So, I mean, it's really hard to predict. I think West Virginia's most winnable games look like UCF and Baylor. But even then, like I said, Baylor's playing much better football. Cincinnati looks like a great team too this next week or 2 weeks from now on November 9th. So I just don't see it. I think if West Virginia were to make a bowl, I think that bowl would be the Liberty Bowl. They haven't played in Liberty Bowl since 2020, which was a pandemic year, a game that hurts a little as an Army fan, not gonna lie. But but yeah, so West Virginia, I think the chances are slim, but it's still there. But the Big 12 is just hard to predict. A lot of parity there in that league and that really mashup of teams. The Big 12 is just really like you said, like what are we doing earlier with the conferences? Like the Big 12, I've hardly watched any Big 12 games because the conference is just like there's just no identity with the conference geographically. Uh, Maybe I should get used to it or get lost in the times, but that's just my thoughts on the Big 12.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. So moving on from that, I guess, statement on the state of college athletics, going on to group of five teams. UConn had a bit of a struggle against Rice this past weekend. Really surprising to me, honestly. And at least at the very least, they got Mike Bloomgren fired for Rice. So I guess the performance for UConn was good enough in that aspect. But your thoughts on UConn and how as they end out the year because I think some power conference wins would help them, I guess, would help ESPN possibly put them in a better bowl. But I just think that at this point now, I saw projections for the Camellia Bowl, which, I mean, after Army Navy, December 14th definitely isn't the most prestigious bowl, but it is a bowl instead. I mean, it is a bowl like in the end.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the most important thing here, Omar, was that UConn completed the trifecta and beat all three owl mascot teams on the schedule. So, we got that we got that under our belts. Yeah, I mean, obviously a kind of a middling win, not a great turnout. Even I think from the student section, they mailed it in and left a little early. Okay, not the best, but remaining schedule, they should be favored in most of these games aside from at Syracuse. Maybe not at UAB. Let me see what the odds are looking like on that one. Oh no, they are favored in in that one as well. So yeah, if they can get the win at Cuse on November 23rd, I think it will go a long way for their prospective bowl uh, selection. Either way, though, I mean, yeah, let's not mince words. UConn is not a huge draw in terms of football. Least of all for a bowl game that may not be anywhere near Stores, Connecticut. So I think really at this stage of the program, just getting to a bowl, getting positive momentum, getting that extra month of practice under the belt, for the program, trying to retain the players on the team, keep them happy and occupied, and keep as many guys, quality guys from transferring out as possible. I think is really where we need to go to build that program up. And I think Jim Moore has been doing a good job with with building the program. I mean, that's where the stage is at right now. We maybe a couple years down the line focus on on trying to get butts and seats and really really put a showcase on for a bowl game. But right now, it's about program building.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, yeah, I guess the program building aspect is huge, and especially going 8-4, an 8-win I guess an 8-win season as independent is huge as well. And they have a chance to do it. They have a good chance to do it. They got UAB, they got UMass. Forgot who the other team was, but it was another really bad team. So, I mean, if
Georgia
UConn,
State.
oh, who was it?
Georgia State.
Georgia State, yeah, Georgia State. Oh, okay, maybe they're not really bad. They did beat Vanderbilt, but that's a very winnable game. UConn should come out on top on that one at home. So 8-4 is a very realistic possibility. And I don't want to jinx anything, but if they don't get bowl eligible with that schedule, I really think there has to be some questions asked in stores. But yeah, the scenario I have playing out, like you said, UConn isn't the biggest brand, and they're in an inopportune spot where they're an independent without much of a brand. So it's not like they can work sweetheart deals with ESPN like Army did back in the day. In fact, I haven't even seen anything about them doing that because, interestingly enough, Liberty and New Mexico State were able to work out deals with ESPN when they were independents. But I think UConn's partnership with CBS Sports Network has ESPN kind of in a petty position and not as willing to work with them for their ESPN owned bowls. I still think they end up in an ESPN owned bowl. Where I have them landing, I have them landing in Boise. I think I said this last week against Fresno State. I think they get the scraps, and that is nothing against the great people of Boise. I really do want to go to the famous Idaho Potato Bowl one day. But the thing was, last year the MAC vacated that spot, and a Sun Belt team played in the Potato Bowl instead. So I can see a similar scenario playing out because there's precedent. But I think the opponent that UConn would get would be Fresno State, maybe even San Diego State, just two solid group of five brand names that a win could just put UConn even more on the map against one of those group of five schools because they lost their bowl game against Marshall, a couple years ago.
See if we can
A
get.
win against, oh, what was that? Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that, John.
Yeah, maybe. Sorry. Yeah. I guess you froze for a second there. I thought you were done. But I'm saying be a future Pac-12 matchup. Probably not. UConn AD has put the kibosh on it, but I still have the dream of UConn football only going to the Pac-12, and obviously San Diego State and Fresno State already confirmed to be headed there. Maybe if the UConn brass sees UConn in a bowl game against one of those teams, they'll kind of change their opinion on how things might go in the future.
Yeah, exactly. I figured like for Pac-12, like football only, like for UConn, that makes sense. Like just, if the Pac-12 is everything that they say they're going to be in terms of revenue, then why not, throw in some money to subsidize UConn's travel if the Pac-12 is such a great brand and they have their war chest. But it seems like they use their war chest instead to break up home and home series for Louisiana Tech and Toledo. Seems like a waste of money in my opinion, but that's nothing against those programs.
Yeah. Hey, this is why we're not athletic directors, I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So going on to Buffalo. Buffalo has really declined. They had a transitive win over Notre Dame earlier this year in beating Northern Illinois, but right now they're 4-4. They're struggling. I still see them making a bowl. They have Kent State, they have Akron still in the schedule, but at this point they may be passed over for some of the better MAC bowl games. So any thoughts on Buffalo on their slide or I guess their prospects for a good Mac Bowl?
I can't lie, Omar. I don't think I've caught a single Buffalo game this year, so I don't want to. I don't want to just blow smoke.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll fill you in. So, I mean, they beat Toledo a couple weeks ago. Toledo, of course, just one of the brand names of the MAC. They're getting pursued by the Mountain West because of their great football ability, but they've just slid recently. They're 4-4. They lost this past week, and they looked like the favorite in the MAC, to be honest with you. But now that looks bygone. Like they lost to Western Michigan a couple weeks ago. They lost to Buffalo by 31 points. That was a crucial game in the MAC race. But I mean, Buffalo just looks like another MAC bowl team. And I guess I'll just tell you my scenario that I have Buffalo at right now. Right now, I have Buffalo playing in the Arizona Bowl. I think that's probably the best case scenario for Buffalo right now. Is the Arizona Bowl and appearance on the CW, but even then, the MAC might want to send their best for such a big audience. So, with that being said, then I guess They've never appeared in a bowl in Florida, so maybe the Boca Raton Bowl is an option. With these MAC teams, it's very hard to forecast with what ESPN does because they're solely based on these ESPN games. But um, yeah, I got Buffalo in. I guess I'll say the Boca Raton Bowl, and I'll have to adjust that in my bowl projections.
Fair enough.
All right. And I think that takes us to all of the teams in the bowl mix in the Lambert Trophy. Conglomerate, of course, Temple. They had a loss against East Carolina, tough year. UMass got their second win. The flagship got their second win against the Fighting Wagner Seahawks. So good for them. And I don't know if I'm missing anyone. Army had a bye week, and that kind of caps everyone, really.
Yeah, I was going to say we didn't really talk Army, but yeah, not much to say. I think it all boils down to yeah, that Notre Dame matchup as well as we were talking last week.
Yeah, exactly. And I was talking to someone in the press box about how I think Army, and not being biased at all, I think Army had the better blueprint to beat Notre Dame because Navy was simply too explosive for their own good. I think Army plays a much more methodical game. They limit possessions. If you think back to the last time Notre Dame lost to Navy, I think Notre Dame had the ball only 7 times the whole game. Navy just continued to march down the field, take time off the clock, and they won 28-27, and they held the ball for the last 7 minutes of the game. I think a game like that, a game plan like that, works in Army's favor. I just don't think that they can have many chunk plays. It's got to be the 3 yards in the cloud of dust that we've seen against Oklahoma, that we've seen against Michigan for Army over the years. But yeah, like you said, it comes down to that for sure because an 0-1 record against power conference teams looks worse than Boise State and even UNLV, who has, I think, 3 wins against power conference teams if you count Oregon State. So yeah.
Right on. Interesting wrinkle, I think, for Army if they are undefeated and win. Say they go and win um, against Navy on the 14th. When is when is the selection for the college football playoff? When does that happen?
So the playoff selection happens on December 8th. So no, our Army Navy, the actual Army Navy game would not be factored into that.
Interesting. So they could if they have a scenario where I guess it probably won't matter because if they are making the playoff, they're probably the 12 seed anyway. But if they have a scenario where they go in and blow out Navy, may rank higher than 12, who knows?
Yeah.
Or they
And
go in and lose to Navy and they end up, it would have been a different selection, perhaps.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, the one word I've used all the time for the whole Army Navy situation is awkward. It's just awkward for all parties. It's awkward for every group of five candidate. It's just awkward for everyone. And I hope that there is a better way going forward. Um, but yeah, I don't have anything else, Sean, to add. Do you have anything final to add before we sign off?
From I think you froze a second there again.
Yeah, you froze as well. Did I miss anything? I was just asking if there's anything final that you would like to add.
Nope, nothing else from me, Omar.
All
Thanks
right,
as
yeah,
always.
yeah, nothing else for me either. I enjoyed this as always, as the Lambert Trophy race heats up and as these teams kind of put their best shot towards bowls. It's going to be fun to watch. But thank you everyone for watching and listening. Whenever you do, till next time, peace, love, and soul. The Burger Popper.